House will please be in order. Those persons not having privilege of the floor, please vacate the chamber. Members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in opening prayer today by the gentleman from the 64th District, Delegate Burkhammer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us pray. Lord, we're thankful for this opportunity to gather here, Lord, and to serve this great state, Lord, but mostly we're thankful for the opportunity to serve you. And Lord, I pray that every decision that's made here, every word that we say, Lord, would be glorifying to you. Lord, it would be according to your will, be according to your holy word. And Lord, may that be our guide. Lord, I ask for prayer for our colleague, Delegate Foggin, today. Lord, I pray for a healing touch upon him. Be with him through this time, with his family, Lord. But we believe that you are the ultimate physician, and we pray that healing touch upon him. Lord, again, we thank you for your love. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for your mercy. And Lord, may you ever guide us and lead us in everything we do. We love you. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
If all members and guests will please remain standing, we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance today by the gentleman from the 90th District, Delegate Miller.
Please join with me and say the strongest 31 words you'll say today. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Wednesday, February 14th, 2024.
Gentleman 78, Delegate Shirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
Gentleman 78, ask unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Further reading of the journal will be dispensed with. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the chair will ask the House to please be in order. The chair will recognize the gentleman from the 29th District, Delegate Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, on behalf of the delegate from the 28th, Delegate Ross, today the Wayne County community mourns the loss of one of our own. 17-year-old Gavin Carrico passed yesterday, suddenly and unexpectedly. He was a student at Wayne High School, a former student of Delegate Ross. His loving parents were also classmates of mine. Gavin was scheduled to visit the Capitol today with his physics class as guests of Delegate Ross. Please join me in a moment of silence for Gavin and keep his family and the Wayne community in your prayers for healing and comfort in the days ahead.
At this time, the House will please pause to observe a brief moment of silence. Thank you, members. Yes, may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, it is West Virginia State University Day here today at the Capitol. So in honor of that, we're joined here today by West Virginia State University student Ahmed Zaman, who will lead us through introductions today. Let's make him feel welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 39th District, Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I have bummed Delegate Smith's microphone here for just a moment. It is West Virginia State University Day. We are pleased to have a number of guests from West Virginia State University here today. A number of you will be introducing them just in a moment, and I'm happy to have them all here today. But one particular guest I want to call your attention to today is a special person who is helping us with a program that we are delivering in collaboration with West Virginia State University for our staff, not just for the staff of the legislature, but for staff across the government here. We have Dr. Leanne Davidson today, Associate Statewide Coordinator for our Certificate of Public Management program, who is with us here in the gallery today. Dr. Davidson, along with Professor Mike Pennington from West Virginia State University, are delivering the state's only CPM program, Certificate of Public Management program. Only one university per state is allowed by the accrediting body to deliver that curriculum in each of the 50 states. And West Virginia State University delivers it here on our behalf. This was developed by the staff of West Virginia State in collaboration with our own staff here at the Capitol. It's a year-long program, and we have approximately 30 members of our staff, as well as a number of staff from various agencies and executive branch offices participating in that program this year, giving professional development opportunities to our staff a day and a half each month, including today. So we are thankful to have West Virginia State here. We consider them a great partner for what we do in trying to advance good public policy on behalf of the state of West Virginia. I think it's a good collaborative model that other states, other institutions could follow, that we're deploying and demonstrating right here in West Virginia. Professor, we thank you for being here today.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 32nd District, Delegate Holston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today joining us, I have a page from Sherman Junior High School. We have Miss Juliet Farrell. She's walking around here somewhere. I don't see her now, but if she would stand in the house, please make her feel welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 86th District, Delegate Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have a friend visiting from the Heartland Institute. She's in the West Gallery, and this would be Linnea Lucan. Please, House, make her feel welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 72nd District, Delegate Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the delegates from the 69th, 70th, and 71st, I have a number of introductions. Joining us today from Harrison County and Youth and Government, I have advisors Jason Haynes, they're in the West Gallery, Andrew Harbert, Seth Marshall, and Tyler Robinson. The students, Jonathan Ferguson, Lance Petrolo, Jacob Holt, Colton Wright, Ella Carlson, Olivia Reed, Rayleigh Joe Cochran, Emmy Salerno, Araceli Bland, Alexis Gunnels, Aubrey Ware, Aurora Farrow, Lennon Rogers, Noah Montanero, Mason Bell Castro, Brody Reed, Wyatt Simmons, Brody Rankle, Kate Thrush, and Serenity Owens. If they'd all stand in the house, would please make them welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 31st District, Delegate Mazzacci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Logan County delegation, I want to introduce our pages from Logan Middle School. If they would please stand, we have Kaylin Perry, we have Alyssa Workman, Kelsey Carter, and the mom, Jessica Davis, is in the North Gallery. If you all would stand, and would you all make them feel welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 93rd District, Delegate Hornby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have, on behalf of all the Berkeley County delegates, we have, if they would stand up in the North Gallery from Berkeley County, the students from Youth and Government. Please make them feel welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 73rd District, Delegate Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining me and my colleagues from the Joining me today is Avery Duncan. If she would stand, I know she just went to the back. She's paging with me today. She's from Hurricane Middle School, and her mom is Erica Duncan, who is up in the galleries. When she comes back in the room, we'll have to recognize her. Oh, there she is. Okay. All right. Please make her feel welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 43rd District, Delegate Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to announce that sponsored by the West Virginia Academy of Family Physicians and celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Doctor Day program, our family doctor today is Lauren Given. If she'd please rise, and everyone give her a warm welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 55th District, Delegate Akers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One young man who was mentioned earlier in the West Gallery, Jonathan Ferguson, wanted to say that one thing that wasn't mentioned about him is his dad is retired captain from the West Virginia National Guard. So, Jonathan, I want to recognize your family for its sacrifice and also in honor of your father. Thank you so much, buddy.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 63rd District, Delegate Dittman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. Everyone, today, Governor Justice has officially declared that February 15th as Critical Thinking Day, or Critical Thinking Awareness Day in the state, recognizing how important it is for West Virginians to nurture and practice critical thinking. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 51st District, Delegate Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the North Gallery, I would like to recognize a registered professional nurse who also happens to be the office manager at Fast Law Office and also happens to be my lovely wife of many years, Lisa Fast. To House and make her welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 56th District, Delegate Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, everyone. I wish it was Critical Thinking Day every day. I've got 2 pages to introduce this morning. On behalf of myself and the delegates from Raleigh County, we've got Lyric Bogus. I don't know where Lyric is. I'm going to wait till Lyric gets back in here. My other page, who also isn't in here at the moment, Kendall Chris from Oak Glen Middle School up in Hancock County. And she's joined by her mother, Christy Chris, and her grandmother, Barb Cunningham. Hopefully she'll walk out while I'm talking. Maybe. But there's Lyric Bogus, one of my pages, from Raleigh County, and he's here with his great-grandmother, Joanne LaForme, if everyone would make them welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 5th District, Delegate Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have a page here today. Bronson Eskew, he's working hard already, from Hurricane Middle School, and he's accompanied by his mother, Amy Eskew, and Brian Eskew. If they would stand in the house, make them feel welcome. And in addition, Mr. Speaker, we have some students here, accompanied by my friend Emily Lahaski, for Youth in Government from Notre Dame. And if they would stand when I say their name, and I hope you get to see a good show here today. Carolyn Arnold, Stella Gigliotti, Bailey Helmick, Anna Grace Lewis, Caden Lahaski, Tristan Korn, Logan Heslip, Zachary Lane, Joseph Ricketts, Stephen Minnick, Daniel Long, Landon Perkins, and Nico Yates. And in addition, if my friend Trent Lahaski, who is Emily's husband, is watching, miss you, man. Wish you could have joined us down here. If the house will make everybody feel welcome.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the 57th District, Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today is West Virginia State University Day, my beloved alma mater, so I want to welcome all the staff, professors, and everybody here from West Virginia State University. In addition, I believe that's the South Gallery, right? Yeah, in the South Gallery, I want to welcome our president of West Virginia State University, President Eric Cage. Make him feel welcome.
Folks, how about recognition for Mr. Zamad? Thank you very much. We have further introductions. Standing committee reports.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for House Bill 5065 regarding continuing education requirements and compensation of guardians ad litem, and reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration House Bill 5441 relating to raising the threshold from $25,000 to $50,000 for the requirement of bids for municipal public works projects, and House Bill 4971 relating to critical materials manufacturing tax, and reports back committee substitutes therefore with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 5159 relating generally to child labor, and reports back a committee substitute therefore with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 5067 to remove the 2-year time frame for medical malpractice suits to be filed only for individuals who were minors when they had their procedures performed, and reports back a committee substitute therefore with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 4299, permit teachers in K-12 schools to be authorized to carry concealed firearms as a designated school protection officer, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 5017 relating to mobile food establishment reciprocity. Committee substitute for House Bill 5017, House Bill 5082, exempt those with 20 years holding an insurance license from attaining additional CEUs. And House Bill 5223 to create the Southern Coalfield Resiliency and Revitalization Program, and reports by committee substitutes therefore with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 507 relating to repeal of West Virginia EDGE, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 4709 relating to vocational and technical education programs, House Bill 5405 providing additional professional development and support to West Virginia educators through teacher and leader induction and professional growth, House Bill 5514 enhancing training requirements for county boards of education members, and House Bill 5607 relating to public charter schools application for funding, and reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that they each do pass as amended, but that they first be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Those 4 bills will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 5021 relating to cardiac response plans, House Bill 5175 eliminate funding for the Center for Nursing and transfer its duties and authorities to the Higher Education Policy Commission, House Bill 5540 relating to fentanyl prevention and awareness education, Lakin's Law, House Bill 5553 to provide and change graduation requirements and change duties relating to academic content standards, and House Bill 5650 allows suspended school personnel to enter school property functions open to the public, and reports back committee substitutes therefore with recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 400, creating limited waiver from Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity requirements for certain water or sewer services projects, and reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that it do pass as amended.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 5311, establishing tax treatment of real property owned by another state government, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 5590, changing reference to the curator of the Department of Arts, Culture, and History to the Secretary of the Department, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Concurrent Resolution 21, Louis Patton Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 32, Sloan Brothers Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 36, Chief Master Sergeant Dan Chandler Memorial Bridge, and House Concurrent Resolution 42, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant William E. Miller Memorial Bridge, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each be adopted, but that they first be referred to the Committee on Rules.
That report will be received. Each of those resolutions will be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Your Committee on Workforce Development has had under consideration House Bill 5162, established a program to promote creation and expansion of registered apprenticeship programs, and reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that it do pass as amended, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Education.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Education.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 5140, allowing certain slaughterhouses sell meat products direct to consumer in individual amounts, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
That report will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Concurrent Resolution 43, to study the potential of Cheat Lake as a state park and the potential economic and social impacts if this area is turned into a park or left for future development, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Rules.
That report will be received, and the resolution will be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 222, exempting West Virginia veterans from certain fees and charges at state parks, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance. Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Concurrent Resolution 3, Legg Brothers World War II Veterans Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 6, Staff Sergeant J.J. Junior Spurrier Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 7, U.S. Navy Radar Man, 3rd Class, Craig W. Haynes Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 9, Private Jefferson Howell Memorial Road, House Concurrent Resolution 12, U.S. Army Private 1st Class, Calvin Lee Loudon Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 19, Corporal Thomas Lowell Wines Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 22, U.S. Army Corporal William Edgar Hancock Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 26, Private 1st Class Jerry Lee Bassett Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 33, U.S. Army Private 1st Class Gale Hall Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 34, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Harley Stephen Gabbert Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 37, U.S. Army Private 1st Class Carl J. Osborne Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 39, U.S. Army Specialist 3 Delbert Sheridan Buck Huffman Sr. Memorial Bridge, House Concurrent Resolution 40, U.S. Marine Corps Master Sergeant Edward P. and MP Carl A. McRae Memorial Bridge, and House Concurrent Resolution 62, U.S. Army First Sergeant Clarence Shirley Blake Memorial Bridge, and reports back committee substitutes, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each be adopted, but that they first be referred to the Committee on Rules.
That report will be received. Each of those resolutions will be referred to the Committee on Rules. Are there other reports of standing committees? Select committee reports.
Your Select Committee on Artificial Intelligence has had under consideration House Bill 5516 relating to criminalizing the use of deep fakes, and reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that it do pass as amended, but that it first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
The report will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. We have other Select Committee reports, executive messages, Senate messages.
The Clerk of the Senate announces that the Senate has passed without amendment the following bills. House Bill 4976, providing the contact information of the Inspector General on the agencies and boards' websites of the executive departments.
The message will be received.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5157, relating to contingent increase of tax rates on certain eligible acute care hospitals.
The message will be received.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 354, relating to the West Virginia Advanced Energy and Economic Corridor Authority.
Message be received.
Clerk of the Senate announces that the Senate has passed the following bills. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 370, updating Public Employees Grievance Board procedure that certain decisions be appealed to Intermediate Court of Appeals.
The message be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Senate Bill 530, removing a requirement for counties to draft and adopt zoning ordinances.
The message be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Senate Bill 378, prohibiting smoking in vehicle when minor 16 or under is present.
Message be received, bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Senate Bill 551, modifying requirements related to levy of service fees.
The message be received, bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Senate Bill 620, establishing West Virginia mothers and babies pregnancy support program.
The message be received, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 628, declaring certain claims as moral obligations of the state.
The message be received, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 629, requiring builders to follow state building code when local inspection and enforcement not provided.
The message be received, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 632, relating to Dangerousness Assessment Advisory Board Multidisciplinary Study Group.
The message be received, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 716, relating to child support.
The message be received, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Senate Bill 790, changing reference to curator of Department of Arts, Culture, and History to Cabinet Secretary.
The message be received. Lady from the 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, that we dispense with the committee reference, and that the bill be read a first time.
Lady from the 71st, ask unanimous consent that Senate Bill 790 be taken up for immediate consideration, that the committee reference be dispensed with, and that the bill be read a first time. Are there objections heard? No objections are heard. The bill will be taken up for immediate consideration. The clerk will please read the bill first time.
Senate Bill 790, changing reference to curator of Department of Arts, Culture, and History to Cabinet Secretary.
Bill will be advanced to second reading. Next Senate message.
The Clerk of the Senate announces that the Senate has adopted the following resolutions. Committee substitute for Senate Concurrent Resolution 4, U.S. Army 2nd Lieutenant Eston Kuhn Memorial Bridge. Senate Concurrent Resolution 21, U.S. Army Master Sergeant James E. Jackson, Jr. Memorial Road. Committee substitute for Senate Concurrent Resolution 22, U.S. Marine Corps Major Cornelius Burdett Memorial Road. Senate Concurrent Resolution 23, U.S. Navy Lieutenant Louis Joseph D'Antoni Memorial Road. Senate Concurrent Resolution 25, U.S. Army Sergeant Wyatt K. Hinton Memorial Bridge. And committee substitute for Senate Concurrent Resolution 26, U.S. Army Private Clarence William Buck Holliday Memorial Road.
Those messages be received. Each of those resolutions be referred to the Committee on Rules. Do we have further Senate messages, resolutions, petitions, bills introduced, motions, unfinished business?
House Concurrent Resolution 74, Defending Life by Rejecting Euthanasia.
The question before the House is, shall the resolution be adopted? Are there objections to having the resolution explained in lieu of having it read in full? Objection is heard. Clerk will please read House Concurrent Resolution 74.
House Concurrent Resolution 74, Defending Life by Rejecting Euthanasia. Whereas societies should not be judged on the basis of how well they provide for the happiness of their young, healthy, and wealthy members, but on the basis of how well they provide for their elderly, their sick, and their poor. The former group relying to a greater extent on their individual strength to carry them through their pursuit of happiness, while the latter group relies on the aid of others. And whereas the happiness of a society's strong members together by mere geographic proximity. And whereas for this reason alone, it is necessary that the practice of euthanasia, which intentionally encourages and ultimately enacts the suicide of the elderly and the infirm remains as foreign to the common life of West Virginia as it is to the healthy of any just and reasonable society. And whereas, instead of that unconditional commitment to love and service by which individuals transcend their own individuality and begin to live as a community, euthanasia offers only conditionality, which measures each and every person against standards of living that may well find them wanting. And instead of occasions to test and prove the promises we make to love each other no matter what, euthanasia degrades infirmity, old age, and the compassion these weaknesses can elicit into occasions to care for each other only so much within a narrow extent and only under finite conditions of convenience. And whereas euthanasia, while ostensibly limiting its impact only to the end of life, actually demoralizes everyone at all stages of life, limiting our noblest society impulses by characterizing life itself as only conditionally worth living, while reducing the care for those who suffer with the means to its destructive end. And whereas good conscience and common sense urge us to instead eradicate whatever grim disease or grim causes of suicidal desire afflict our West Virginia community. To do otherwise would be to adopt an unequal and irrational policy to which suicidal ideation in the young and otherwise healthy is treated as an illness in want of a cure, while suicidal ideation in the elderly and infirm is treated as a demand in need of a supply. And whereas such a two-faced answer to the timeless question of whether life is worth living makes a mockery of good and prudential government, while giving credence to the cynicism that so often sees in the rule of law nothing more than a favoring of the strong over the weak, and ultimately such a dreadful policy forces the state and its representatives to determine between good and bad suicide, thus expanding the state's authority beyond every reasonable limit and inciting it to act as a God amongst men. And whereas to any such apparent demand for euthanasia, nothing but a society-wide effort of reform will serve as an adequate response. Such a campaign against the despairing loneliness and lack of meaning in life spreading from the nihilism of our present age must include the active encouragement of friendship, intergenerational family life, meaningful work, civic participation, the uplifting of our community with beautiful architecture, festivals, and holidays to celebrate our common life together, compassionate medical care, a culture of genuine love and appreciation for the elderly, and the unequivocal affirmation that every human life, no matter what suffering it bears, is never a burden to be done away with, but a gift of infinite and interminable goodness from that which is true and beautiful. And whereas it is not the case that the technical consent of the infirm and elderly to their own suicide renders euthanasia as something just and good, we are social creatures, apt to act on each other's desires and meet each other's expectations in order to keep a broad and abiding peace. Whereas when a society enshrines in its law, decrees in its conventional wisdom, and affirms in its practice the possibility of illicit suicide, it is a vain pretense to imagine that such validations are not themselves formative of individual desire and that they do not suggest in morally empowered terms, suicide as a responsible and law-abiding solution to the problems of pain. And whereas the very possibility that doctors, whose authority in our society can be profound, may prescribe suicide as a solution to a terminal disease or disheartening prognosis, presents the act as a medicine rather than as the definitive rejection of all medicine, and so encourages suicidal desire to flourish. And whereas euthanasia is not a solution to a need, but is rather productive of the very need that it purports to fulfill, and therefore our great state of West Virginia ought to preemptively reject euthanasia by an amendment to our state constitution, for this accords with our tradition of patriotism. And whereas a healthy commonwealth relies on the virtues of its members, and a well-functioning republic demands that those who participate in it embody a minimum of goodwill, prudence, and fortitude, by which the individual is enabled to love the common good and to sacrifice his own interest for its sake. And a community which does not foster this patriotism is a community in name only, a mere collective mix of individuals unwilling to live as members of a social body that both includes and transcends them. Whereas this patriotism, which sustains and nourishes West Virginia, is a seed sown in the soil of the family and a lesson learned in the school of friendship. These patriotic lessons of love are severely disrupted by euthanasia, which would encourage healthy residents of our state to facilitate the suicide of those whose age and infirmity would otherwise call forth their loving sacrifice, even as it would encourage those in our state who suffer to see themselves as a burden to their friends rather than as an occasion for their heroic love and virtue. Whereas a people accustomed to euthanizing their fathers are not a people prepared to sacrifice themselves for their father's home, and children raised under advertisements recommending suicide are not children who are being raised ready to suffer and give of themselves for the good of our state, all of which demonstrates that euthanasia destroys the solidarity of the family, and that through this route, it would ultimately help destroy the character of West Virginia. And whereas the rejection of euthanasia as utterly foreign to the spirit of West Virginia is a commitment to keeping our hands free of innocent blood and to professing in all humility a limitation to the power of the state, which cannot administer death as a cure for pain without usurping divine prerogatives. And whereas such a limitation is also a protection against the avarice and cynicism of a wealthy elite who stand to gain by disrupting the stable and peaceful customs by which families in our state love each other, bear with one another, and care for their sick and dying. Euthanasia suggests that these customs stand in need of new commodities, technologies, professions, and facilities, the development of which cannot be guided by the ideals of care and compassion alone, but must promote themselves for the sake of producing a profit. And whereas by rejecting this redefinition of death as a commodity to be purchased from and administered by strangers, we must also reject the bleak and morbid world such a commodification entails, namely a world in which merchants with a monetary interest in increasing the number of our residents who kill themselves are given leeway to advertise their poisons, promote their products, lobby for their industry, and otherwise invade civic and domestic spaces with the suggestion that we either kill ourselves or facilitate the suicide of our loved ones. Therefore, be it resolved by the legislature of West Virginia that the state of West Virginia rejects the bleak and morbid world that euthanasia and the commodification of death entails, and be it further resolved that we recognize that euthanasia destroys the solidarity of the family and that it would thereby destroy the state of West Virginia, and be it further resolved that it is necessary that the practice of euthanasia, which intentionally encourages and ultimately enacts the suicide of the elderly and the infirm, remains as foreign to the common life of West Virginia as it is to the health of any just and reasonable society. And be it further resolved that the state of West Virginia preemptively and decisively rejects euthanasia. And be it further resolved that against this culture of death, we must offer a vision of a restored and rejuvenated West Virginia, a community whose strength is known by the happiness of the weak, the infirm, and the elderly, who are not only aided and assisted by their family, friends, and society until the day they die, but whose very suffering is the irreplaceable means by which we may transcend ourselves, enter deeply into communion with one another, fulfill our nature as social creatures, and learn the sacrificial love that so often gives life its meaning.
You've heard the resolution read. The question now before the House is, shall the resolution be adopted? The chair will recognize the sponsor of the resolution, gentleman from the 1st, Doggett McGeehan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really don't have too much more to say on this particular resolution. It's a House concurrent resolution authored to justify and give the rationale behind the resolution to come here. That's HJR 28, which would place language into the state constitution with a prohibition against such. So I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has anything on my writing. Appreciate you guys having it read in its entirety. I enjoy listening to my essay there, so thank you.
Question still is on the adoption of the resolution. Is there debate on this resolution? Gentleman from the 29th, Doug Dillon, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor.
Gentleman from the 29th, ask unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor of House Concurrent Resolution 74. Are there objections heard? No objections are heard. Gentleman will be so added. Is there debate on House Concurrent Resolution 74? If not, those in favor of adoption of roll call is demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall HCR 74 be adopted? Those in favor of adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 87 ayes, 9 nays, 4 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares this resolution adopted. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Is there further unfinished business today? If not, bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 28, Protection from Medically Assisted Suicide or Euthanasia in West Virginia Amendment.
The question is, shall the resolution be adopted? Is there objection to having the resolution explained in lieu of having it read in full? No objections are heard. Shall I recognize the gentleman from the 1st, Doggett McGeehan, to explain the resolution?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The resolution is actually just 2 sentences. It is designed to place this prohibition of medically assisted suicide or euthanasia into the state constitution. You can read it for yourself. It's pretty cut and dry. I'm welcome to take any questions that any of the members might have, and I reserve the right to close. Thank you very much.
You've heard the resolution explained. The question is, shall the resolution be adopted? Is there debate on this resolution? Is there debate on the resolution? Gentleman from the 76th, Doug Garcia, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So when we had this resolution up in the Judiciary Committee, I looked at it, and the very last line, where it talks about withholding or withdrawing life-sustaining treatment, and again, this is in reference to what a healthcare provider is unable to do based on this constitutional amendment. But it talks about so long as the intention is not to kill the patient. And as somebody who puts together living wills for people and who looks at the possibility that there are situations where someone does not want to be resuscitated, this, I think, is dangerous. And I thought about offering an amendment. I had it written out in the Judiciary Committee, but I was basically told it's not going to pass. So I said, well, there's no reason to deal with it there if that's the case, but I really have concerns that the dignity that people have in the state of West Virginia for how they end their life, and this is not necessarily euthanasia, but the way that this bill defines it can absolutely have an impact on those individuals who say that they don't want to necessarily have certain life-sustaining treatment. Second thing I'll add is that this is number 23 in the West Virginia Bill of Rights. That's what Article 3 is. You know what number 22 is? The right to keep and bear arms. And honestly, we've had, I think this is the third constitutional amendment that we've taken up here today. And just because you agree with a policy does not mean it reaches the standard to be put on a constitutional ballot. There's, from what I understand, nothing like this happening in the state of West Virginia. I believe it's illegal. So there's no reason why every single thing, and we're going to start having 20 or 30 constitutional amendments if we do this about every issue. You know, what we don't have a constitutional amendment about, what we're not giving the people of the state of West Virginia the option about whether they want to enshrine in our Bill of Rights, is whether a woman has the right to choose whether to have an abortion. That's a constitutional amendment that we have, that we've offered, to give that option to the people of the state of West Virginia. But that hasn't even gotten a hearing on this House floor. But this does. So for those reasons, I'm going to oppose putting something like this on the ballot for a constitutional amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 94th Comp is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the author yield?
Yes, gentleman does yield.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Just as a preamble, I tremendously am impressed with your integrity, education, and principles, and listen carefully to what you have to say. But I do have a couple questions. Sure. Do you have any knowledge of any assisted suicides being done in West Virginia?
I mean, it's against the law statutorily right now. I have knowledge of, no, I take that back. I do not have any knowledge of any assisted suicides, technically, in the state of West Virginia.
As the author of the bill, did you make yourself available to the Republican caucus of the Judiciary Committee or of the committee hearing on that bill?
I was available. So I wasn't in the room, but I was available.
Okay. I've mentioned in my preamble the qualities I think you have. Do you also consider yourself a man of faith?
I do.
As a man of faith, who do you think is the ultimate judge of any actions we have?
The Creator.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to have a question to the chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
Does the chairman yield for a question?
Yes.
Chairman does yield.
Thank you, Delegate Chairman. I also deeply admire your character, your education, and your morality. Do you consider yourself a man of faith?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, permission to speak on the bill.
Gentleman has no further questions.
No further questions.
Then the gentleman is recognized to speak in debate on the resolution.
Voting on this bill is probably the most traumatic and troubling vote I've had to take since I've been in the House of Delegates, in and out since 2010. I also noticed that this is a priority bill for West Virginians for Life, an organization which I truly admire and respect. I consider myself pro-life, for conception, and beyond that, nurturing children. And I also am absolutely opposed to capital punishment. Regarding children, our Savior said that those who offend a little one would be better off having a millstone hung around their neck and drowned in the sea. I agree with that. As a man of faith, I am also ordained minister. But as an ordained minister, I am not elected to be a delegate for the 94th District of West Virginia House of Delegates. And speaking of suicide, I have a lot of experience, more than I want. I began to think and ponder this issue back in the 70s with Dr. Kevorkian. Not with him, but about him. In fact, I had a very good friend who was of the opposite political faith of mine, liberal rather than conservative, Roman Catholic nun, who she and I had some very intense discussions. My first experience with suicide was when I was 14 years old, coming home from a paper route before the sun rose. I saw a light moving around in the neighbor's backyard, and when I went to investigate, I found out it was a man on flame, a man who had dosed himself with paint thinner and caught himself on fire, leaving a suicide note behind. By the time I got to him, you could not tell that he was human from the waist up. I remember my mother coming to grab me, telling me, "Get away from there, you shouldn't be looking at that, and by the way, anybody who commits suicide is a coward." I've pondered that experience for a long time. Later in years, as an active member of my newfound faith, I was teaching young children, youth, and one of my students, Ben Baker, as a young boy, and I became good friends. Later in years, he got in some trouble, was troubled by what was going on, and unfortunately took his life. The night he took his life, I was on the road out of town. He called my house, wanted to talk to me. My wife at the time said I was out of town and unavailable, and he said fine and hung up. That night he took his life. The next day was my birthday, and my wife called me on my birthday to tell me happy birthday, and by the way, your best buddy, Ben, is dead. When I was divorced then from this first wife, I was traumatized and actually had suicidal thoughts. I overcame that. And then, much later, when I had terminal cancer diagnosed 3 separate times in my life, the first time was really, really bad. The chemotherapy was just devastating. The doctors told me that I could get some relief from the nausea and the pain with medical marijuana, and I said, okay, give me some of that. They said, well, that's illegal in Indiana, but you can get some from one of the nurses on the side. I chose not to do that. And then the doctors told me, not overtly, but it was so bad and the cancer was terminal, they could find ways to not only ease my pain, but to end my life. I chose not to. My wife, beloved wife Cheryl, a few of you know, but most don't, I think, is terminally ill. She doesn't have much time left. She doesn't complain. One of the things that bothers me the most is we're in bed at night. She often cries in her sleep from the pain. She is more than ready to meet her Maker, but is going to hold on to the end to do the best she can as long as she can. She previously was married 26 years before she was married to me, to a very abusive husband. Her situation was so bad that she told me just the other night that 3 times she just considered committing suicide, but decided not to. In fact, one of the songs that is very near and dear to me, you might know, those of you who are old enough, is Honey, I Miss You by Bobby Goldsberg. Reminds me of my wife Cheryl in very many ways. I believe that suicide is a sin, but I also believe it's a choice. To me, no matter how I vote on this bill, I will be both wrong and right. This is a difficult choice for me. Wordsworth once said, if I can paraphrase him, that life is both a sleep and a forgetting, that we come here from heaven in the wings, we come here from heaven with wings of glory. I think there's three gifts among many that God gives us. One is life, the other is the principle of repentance, which I am really, really grateful for, and the other is our individual moral agency. So the choice vote, but I thought it was important for me to stand and tell you my concerns. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 42nd, Douglas Steele, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been thinking a lot about this resolution, and it takes me back to early in my career. I practiced in the bailiwick of the gentleman from the 51st over in Fayette County, and I was a mental hygiene commissioner. And it's difficult to be a mental hygiene commissioner anywhere in West Virginia, but Fayette County especially, due to the presence of the New River Gorge Bridge. The New River Gorge Bridge is actually listed on a website. I don't know if that website still exists, but it did most certainly back when I was a mental hygiene commissioner, called suicide.com. And suicide.com touted the New River Gorge Bridge as one of the top 10 places in America to go kill yourself. And as a mental hygiene commissioner, I was only given the opportunity to speak to those individuals that attempted unsuccessfully to approach the bridge to end their own life. And I can tell you that in my time as a mental hygiene commissioner, in getting to speak to those people, there was a lot of regret on their part. I'm talking about people that drove from Michigan, Virginia, Georgia. I can think of them from Missouri. And I can think of a lot of bridges that you could have probably jumped off of between those places in beautiful Fayetteville, West Virginia. But one of the great things about the New River Gorge Bridge and that beautiful scenery that's on that, it's on the corridor that our states, or the U.S. corridor, we have that bridge on there. It's a picturesque scene. What stops people is when they look down, because everyone has an idealistic idea of their own suicide if they're going down that road, that they will go out to the middle of the bridge, hang their feet over the edge, and take the leap into the river. The problem with that is the New River does not run directly under the center of the New River Gorge Bridge. So when the person gets to the center of the bridge and looks down, a moment of pause comes into play because they're staring at rocks and trees, not a river. And fortunately, that gives our law enforcement time to step in and talk those folks off the bridge. In my time as a mental hygiene commissioner, I did not meet one person that encountered that pause that was upset or regretted. As a matter of fact, they were thankful that they were able to be taken or talked off the bridge. That doesn't happen every time. As I've said in here before, we cannot legislate the hearts of man. Can't do it. Only the good Lord above can change the heart of man. And I can't imagine the pain and the sorrow that anyone could be going through in which they would feel the need to end their own life. As the gentleman from the 5th said yesterday, I can empathize with that, but I've never stood in those shoes. And certainly as a mental hygiene commissioner, I can empathize with that as well. As I look at what's before us today, it's not to answer the question as to whether or not someone should kill themselves or commit suicide. It's an incredibly deep personal decision that the only thing I can offer up to them is prayer. But what I do feel good about putting into law and putting into code is to not have another person facilitate that for them. Because as a mental hygiene commissioner, I can tell you, I never met one person that walked away from that wasn't thankful they were talked away from it. I never met one person like that. And what we have going on is a new function of debate in America, because another state has opened its laws and opened its borders to assist folks in committing suicide. There's nations that are our neighbors that have opened their borders to assist in suicide. And I think this is an appropriate thing to put out to the people of West Virginia, that they would make the statement, are we going to say that doesn't happen here? That we are going to not stand by and allow purported medical personnel to talk people into ending their life? I think the people of West Virginia, and why I'm going to vote for this resolution, I think the people of West Virginia would rather have someone put an arm around that person that's in hurt and in pain than a needle in their arm. That's what I believe. And this purely is a belief question. I don't even know that it falls along political ideological lines. The only thing that I can speak from is personal experience. And that is, as I sat in the chair as a mental hygiene commissioner talking to these people, I never met one that wasn't thankful they were talked off that bridge. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 57th, I got Lewis is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to first, before commend the gentleman from the 94 for sharing his story and offer my condolences to you. Would the sponsor yield for questions, please?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, sir. In this resolution, is there any, for those patients who are suffering terminally or have severe mental health issues, whether it's in this resolution or anywhere else, that you offered any sort of assistance for those individuals as far as mental health, behavioral health assistance?
In the resolution before you right now?
In the resolution or anywhere else?
Well, there's just 2 sentences, and this is just strictly dealing with the prohibition.
Okay, so there's a...
But in the House concurrent resolution, which was read in its entirety, I mentioned in there that we have to go further and offer services such as what you're stating right now.
Okay, appreciate you. Can I speak to the bill?
No further questions?
No further questions.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Again, I'm a Christian, God-fearing man, and I certainly don't want to see anybody, commit suicide or any hospital or anything like that. However, I think before we can implement these sort of measures, we have to get people help. Our state is suffering from a wide variety of issues, whether it be SUD issues, behavioral health issues. So when we're implementing things like this, like gentleman Steele mentioned, we have to put an arm around somebody, and we actually have to implement measures that's going to get those individuals behavioral health treatment and services, whether that's at a very low cost or free. So, these individuals who are in these states of mind, who are suffering these traumatic events, they are not left alone or left to their own devices. Because left to their own devices, if they can't see a mental health or behavioral health or mental hygiene person, then this may feel like their only way out. So I would just ask that before we implement any of these issues, or excuse me, these measures, saying that a person doesn't have the right to do what they want to do with their body at the time, that at the least we provide them with some sort of guidance, whether that's behavioral health from the clergy or whatnot. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 32nd, Douglas Holstein is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As most of you know in here, I usually don't stand up to talk about bills or resolutions or anything of that matter unless it's just an explanation. But today I want to give you all lay out a scenario here and let you ponder on it. My sister, she's 12, 13 years older than me. She lives in South Carolina now. She lived in Northeast Ohio in Lake County for roughly 6 or 7 years. And there she met one of the best friends she's ever had in her life. Obviously not going to say the lady's name, but I had the great opportunity to meet her, and she was such a kind woman. Unbeknownst to my sister, who spent nearly every day with her weekly, she was suffering from severe depression. And my sister received a call and a voicemail that she woke up to in the middle of the night with her best friend telling her goodbye. And by the time my sister contacted authorities and she was able to reach her friend's residence, she had already committed suicide, and my sister found her there in the state that she was in. So I would just ask the body to consider, do we want an opportunity for folks who are struggling with what is obviously mental illness, what's obviously a decision that's being made in a capacity that's not clearly being thought out? Decision to take your life is usually not, or I would suggest is never a decision that's rational. I don't think it should be the policy of this state to allow that to occur at anyone's consent. I think that's a terrible, terrible thing, and it's a suffering that not only the individual and their families, but the community around them has to go through. So I would just ask the body to consider these situations and please vote for this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from the 19th, Douglas Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure at times if it's my place to talk about this or not. Some in this body know. Excuse me. And some do not. I have a son that suffers from schizophrenia and major depression. He's not terminal, but he is terminally stuck in his own mind. He's currently in the hospital receiving treatment. But just yesterday, was speaking to him throughout the day, he mentioned several times how he couldn't understand how he wouldn't be better off dead. But also know when his medications are working, he does not have those same thoughts. But when they're not working, they consume his mind. As I said, a mind that he is stuck in, not getting any better. I always wish for hope that there will be something that can be done, and I pray for that daily. But I cannot imagine that he goes to somebody and convinces them on a bad day that he needs to just be dead. I think it is a step too far to allow euthanasia. And because of that, and because of my son, I will be voting for this bill. And I know there are others out there that are stuck just like he is. But I know somewhere along the line, there's got to be help. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 47th, like at Longacre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm hearing a lot of desperation in the room. We all have loved ones that we know or friends or acquaintances who are desperate in their life. I can empathize with the gentle lady from the 19th. My brother is 53 years old, still lives with my elderly mother on my property where myself and my wife can be there for them. He also struggles with paranoid, he's been diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic and bipolar, and has been like this his whole life. There are days that he has had tendencies, but I'm here to tell you, I'm glad that he never followed through with those tendencies. I'm glad that my brother has never sought out someone to take the place of God. And far too often we try to take the place of God. And there's a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues in life we as mortal human beings may not understand or don't have a readily accessible answer for. And so for me, I like to go back to God's word and ask, what about this, God? Because I don't know. I only know what I know, and that's not a lot sometimes. But if I go back to God's word, the Bible will show us that to those who are desperate, you know, suicide is not always the best option. In Christ, there's always hope. The supernatural ability that he has to raise people from the dead, to turn people's illnesses 180 degrees in the face of desperation. We also know the Bible speaks of many who felt deep despair in their life. Solomon, in his pursuit of pleasure, reached out to the point where he hated life. Elijah was fearful and depressed and yearned for death. Another hero of the Old Testament of our God's word, Jonah, was so angry at God that he wished to die. Even the Apostle Paul, during his ministry, he complains several times that he was under great pressure, far beyond his own ability to endure, and at many occasions despised life itself. But you know what? Because nobody was there to encourage them to die and go ahead and end it, we know, those of us who reach out into God's word to find answers for our own lives today, we know what happened. Solomon learned to fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. Elijah was comforted by an angel, allowed to rest, allowed to recover, and given a new commission in life. He turned it around. Jonah received admonition and rebuke for his attitude toward God and his desire to be dead. And we know what happened there. You know, when I heard some of the stories today, especially the gentleman in the back discuss what's going on personally impacting him and his wife right now, I thought of Job. Can you imagine what Job went through? We would not have that story if there was a Dr. Kevorkian out there consulting Job. And even the Apostle Paul learned that although pressure he faced was oftentimes beyond his ability to endure, the Lord can bear all things. And this happened, in Paul's words, this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but we rely on God instead. And I'll close with this, Mr. Speaker. Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. For the Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. The Lord has given, and the Lord will taketh away. It didn't say God has given and Todd will take away. It said God has given and God will take away, and that was Job. And I'm glad he went through what he did and came out on the right side of things and give us this lesson we can all live by today. This is a good resolution. I support this resolution. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, the chair is giving considerable latitude to all members on this topic. It does elicit emotional responses from all of us. So the chair is giving considerable latitude to all members. The chair will remind all members to keep debate on this and all topics as close to the actual resolution and bill before us as we can. Gentleman from the 84th, Doug Jennings, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was debating on whether to stand up or not. As a medic, the medics in here can testify. We see a lot of suicide attempts, but I want to talk to you about two different things that I've seen. One was an 18-year-old beautiful young man decided to take his own life with a gun, and he shot up underneath here. He blew his eyeball out. And, you know, the bullet came out up here on his brain. And I looked up on the ceiling. You seen flesh up there. And you know what he was saying? He wasn't dead. He was saying, save me, save me. 15 minutes earlier, that wouldn't have been a discussion. But that's how quick it changes. And the other one I want to tell you about was a car wreck. And the person that we took out, we thought he was dead. He wasn't dead. We got him on HealthNet. They thought he was not going to live. He was in a coma for 5 years. He's walking around talking and everything now. This was years ago. So, you know, to be able to say, okay, let's pull the plug on this guy. This would have been one of the candidates that they would have pulled the plug on. But he's now walking around. So I really agree with this. Well, it's not a bill. Resolution, and I hope that we pass it. Thank you.
Lady from the 81st, Doug Hamilton, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to deal with medically assisted suicide in this state, it's not a legal option. And what has been put in place is the fact that as a patient, every patient that comes into the hospital, we ask everyone the same question. If your heart was to stop, do you want us to perform basic CPR? Do you want us to bring you back to life? Every patient has the right to make that decision. If they say yes, we put CPR on their band. If they say no, we put DNR. Every patient also has the right to a living will and advance directives, meaning that as long as they are mentally able, they are capable, they make the choice. They have the right to make the choice on the direction of their care. Within those directions, for instance, if you're on dialysis, if you refuse dialysis, then we all know you won't live to see the next week, but patients have that right to direct their care. Oftentimes we tend to link this only to the terminally ill, and we've heard of all the horrific circumstances which as a healthcare worker, it just lends to where we as a system need to have better resources for our residents so that they can make healthy decisions about their care and live a more productive life, especially in the area of mental health. But oftentimes, a mispopulation that we see a lot is those that are incarcerated. I had a patient that was 50 years old that wanted to be a DNR, and that told me that he had a life sentence. His desire was not to live. He did not want something to sustain his life if we could bring him back. So we see a lot of many sad cases where, you know, technology, medical equipment can help them, can sustain their life, but as a medical and a healthcare worker, we have to abide by their wishes. So in this case, I think that it's important to note that no doctor can help someone die. And I mean, honestly, it's illegal, and we cannot determine somebody's life, but individually, we all make that choice, and that choice has to be respected in relation to all things that we do. So, you know, I'm not understanding the point of this resolution because it's not practiced, and it's not a practice in West Virginia, and our healthcare systems do uphold this, but I do support the notion that individuals have the right to direct their own life, and as medical care workers, we do not assist in taking someone's life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from the 49th, Dr. Tully is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today actually to urge adoption of the resolution as a healthcare provider, and I'm going to tell you why. I was an ICU nurse for many, many years before I was ever a nurse practitioner. Held a lot of hands, wiped a lot of tears, witnessed a lot of tragedy. Participated in a lot of family meetings and ethics meetings in which patients or their families received very difficult news or had to make very difficult choices. And I want to refer back to the language in the resolution on the last line. So as long as the intention is not to kill the patient. I can tell you with the West Virginia Healthcare Decisions Act, honoring someone's living will or following their leads of their medical power of attorney, when those decisions were made at the bedside, the intention was not to kill the patient. It was usually to alleviate suffering or to allow a natural progression of a disease course or an injury to occur. So when you take someone off of a ventilator, talk after having a family meeting or something like that, that is not covered under this. The resolution clearly addresses that. It says it is not considered euthanasia. It allows all of those things to happen. I think what we are having in the state, maybe not now at this point, or other states are seeing happen, is they're really allowing euthanasia and allowing mercy killings for individuals, particularly coming from Canada. If you read some of the articles that are coming out of there, that's very different than what is going on at this state, in this state at this point in time. And do we want to allow that to creep within our borders? I thank the gentleman from the first for working with me with the resolution, and I thank the chair, and I'd urge adoption. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 22nd, Douglas Linville, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my friend from the first yield?
Yes.
Thank you. In your proposed constitutional amendment, I've heard now multiple folks say that this would potentially violate living wills. I'm on line 17 and 18, and it plainly states, nor does anything in this section prohibit the withholding or withdrawing of life-sustaining treatment. Was that an effort by you as the sponsor to ensure that living wills could be carried out and followed?
Yes, I mean, this is called the principle of double effect. It's a philosophical principle, but it was actually enshrined in sort of some legal doctrine with the Karen Quinlan case, I believe. Some of the lawyers in here might be more familiar with this case that took place in the late 1970s with the New Jersey Supreme Court. And the principle of double effect was recognized in this case. And since then, this is what gave rise to the proposition that, say you have a family member that's in a vegetative state or a family member that has a living will that says do not resuscitate, that is not the intention to kill, right? So double effect would be something like where an action has two significant effects, one intended and one unintended. So even if you could foresee that withdrawing life-sustaining extraordinary equipment to, say, a relative in a vegetative state, that is still not the intention to kill. It's the intention to perhaps relieve burdensome equipment, the intention to have that relative live on their own, or allow the natural progression of their condition to continue. And so nothing in this state right now, if we were to adopt this resolution into the state constitution, would change. And so any propositions that were made to the contrary are just very misguided.
In addition to that, can you help refresh the body as to what the state of the law is today? So presently in the law, we've outlawed these very practices. Is that accurate?
I didn't hear the last phrase you uttered.
Is that accurate? We have, in the state of the law today, not allowed for euthanasia.
That's correct.
And so the purpose of a constitutional amendment or putting this question before the voters to modify our Constitution would be to make sure that some future legislature never does that.
I mean, that's one reason, and I'll speak to multiple other reasons when I get a chance here, but yes, that's one reason.
Certainly. That's all I have for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Friends, we've had a lot of impassioned speeches so far in here, and I probably am the last person that you might have thought would have stood up to speak on this today. But I've been reflecting on what's in front of us. And in states where they do have the death penalty, look at all the lawsuits surrounding the means by which that sentence was carried out. It's been determined by the United States Supreme Court in multiple different cases to be cruel and unusual punishment. You can Google it right now if you want and see all the various drugs and means by which people are put to death. The very worst among us, those who've been convicted by a jury of their peers, generally murderers, and have done the very worst things. But I want you to realize that the vote that you're putting forward today is not whether or not the Constitution will change. It is whether or not you would put this to the voters of the people of West Virginia. Friends, there's been a lot of invoking God here today, and there are some commentators who belittle us for doing that. There are folks who have said that we cling to our God and our guns. Well, we do. I think West Virginia does, and I'm proud of that. I'm very proud of that. And so I'll do that right now. The first and greatest commandment when Jesus was asked is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. And the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. I would ask that this body put forward to the voters of West Virginia if they love their neighbor as theirself. Mr. Speaker, I urge adoption.
The gentleman from the 13th, Douglas Hackert, is recognized.
I'm going to support this resolution. It had very long ago that my dad was incapacitated in a bed. He asked me to end it. And I told him I couldn't do it. I think this resolution is good for the people that aren't able to make decisions for themselves. And I think we should support it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there other debate on this resolution? Gentleman from the 25th, Douglas Hornbuckle, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Chair, Judiciary, yield?
Does the gentleman yield for a question?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple quick questions. First, and I know it's a very sensitive and emotional topic, was anyone with the Hospital Association have any issues with this proposal?
I'm not aware of any.
Yes, sir. Hospice?
Same.
And our Nurses Association?
No.
Yes, sir. And also, if a medical power of attorney was not properly executed, something as simple as a signature being missed, would that potentially subject someone to criminal charges?
Potentially object someone to who? I just can't hear you.
Excuse me, subject someone to criminal charges if a medical power of attorney was not properly executed?
That would end up in a court rather quickly if you had a technicality like that. But I will say to you, medical power of attorneys or living wills, I write many of those. And most of the time, when it comes to what we call special directives, number one, it gives the appointed person the right to make medical decisions, but special directives, they have the opportunity to state, if two doctors certify, one of whom is my treating physician, that, and I will paraphrase, basically a machine would only keep me alive, then in that permanent condition, I choose not to be hooked up to artificial life support. And if I am hooked up, I want it removed. But that's only in the limited circumstance that it's you're beyond medical hope of recovery. And so that would allow the natural process, the natural course that's stated in this to take place. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Would the gentleman from the 26th yield for a question?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And to my understanding, I think we only have two practicing physicians amongst us, and you're one of those. The other gentleman's not here today. The question I want to ask is, if you, as a practicing physician, withhold treatment from someone, do you know for sure if they're going to die?
Could the gentleman rephrase the question and hold his microphone just a little closer?
Yes, sir. That better? I'm sorry. So if you were to withhold treatment from a patient, do you know the end result will for sure be death?
Why would I withhold treatment from someone?
Medical possibilities, some type of medical situation
So
that
you're
might
saying
happen.
that I would withhold treatment from someone against their will?
I didn't say against the will. I said if you withheld that.
No, I'm trying to figure out the circumstances under which I would withhold treatment from an individual.
According to living,
I would never do that under my oath. I hope the gentleman understands that.
according to the living will, would you do that? Is there any situation where that could possibly happen, and do you know for sure the outcome?
Again, we're not in the business in medicine of withholding treatment from people. It's just not something that we're in the business of.
So this practice isn't taking place in West Virginia?
Euthanasia?
Yes.
I don't believe euthanasia is taking place in the state of West Virginia. And I think this bill is going to assure that it doesn't.
Thank you. Again, I know it's a very emotional topic. I just think, and I appreciate the gentleman from the first, I think the intent is righteous, but I do think it is incomplete and it could potentially harm some unintended consequences.
Is there other debate on the House Joint Resolution 28? If not, shall recognize the sponsor, gentleman the first, to close debate on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First off, I just want to address things that have been said in here that are wrong-headed and perhaps led some people down the wrong path. This has nothing to do with withdrawing care from a patient surrogate or decision maker, withholding care, or DNRs. It's covered right in that section in the second sentence. This purely doesn't even deal with suicide per se. It deals with physicians-assisted suicide, medically assisted suicide. Okay, because there is a growing movement throughout this country right now and in Canada of euthanasia, medically assisted suicide, mercy killing. Okay, there are 10 states plus the District of Columbia that now have it legalized. There are an additional 19 states this year that are considering legalizing medically assisted suicide. So if you think this isn't a problem, trust me, it is. Last year alone, to our northern border, a very sizable fraction of all deaths in Canada came from their euthanasia program. Oregon last year just changed their euthanasia law to expand it to any resident in the country to visit Portland, wait 2 weeks, get a script from a doctor, go down to the local pharmacy, take a cocktail of poison, lay down in some sort of Airbnb, which now an entire market has been created in Portland around what they call the death with dignity law. An entire market, profit-based market on a culture of death. So there's Airbnbs and hotels that are devoted strictly in Portland now towards this law. So if you're a non-resident of Oregon and you want to go off yourself, you don't want to do it yourself, you want a doctor to do it, you fly out to Oregon, you wait 2 weeks, you get a script from a doctor, you go down to the pharmacy, they give you a whole cocktail of poisons, you lay down on one of these beds at either one of these devoted hotels or an Airbnb, take the cocktail, it destroys your intestines, and then social workers come by later and pick up the bodies. You know how I know this? Because last year, after we got out of session, I had a gentleman who was a constituent who was 54 years old. His name was Edward. I won't give you his last name. Didn't know the man. I was actually at the doctor's office just essentially trying to get a checkup on some of the stress some of these people caused me. And I got a phone call. And normally, all of us, you're pretty used to getting phone calls from constituents, but they're typically about potholes, you know, or I've got some beef with the DMV. But this gentleman called me and said, will you legalize euthanasia in West Virginia? And it was just odd. I'm sitting in my, family doctor's office waiting on him to come check my blood pressure. And I said, well, no. But, hey, I'm busy right now. I'll give you a call back. And so I left, got home. It was a Wednesday evening, Holy Week, right before Easter. And called him back, and he said, he's wealthy, actually, but he's alone. 54, and he got dealt a bad hand. We got a bad prognosis with colon cancer. And the doctor said, his doctors said, hey, look, if you do undergo the treatment, it might go into remission. You got 2 years with treatment, but there's a big chance it could go into remission. If you don't, 6 months if you don't take any treatment. This man was alone. He lived 30 minutes from me. He was a stranger. He was alone. Didn't have a wife, his parents had passed away. So that's one big cause, by the way, in some of these movements is loneliness, the atomization of the individual in our society today. The breakdown of family bonds, community bonds, social bonds. That's one big cause of this. And so I got to know this gentleman. He said, well, listen, I just wanted to say my piece to you. I'm flying to Oregon because now they can take non-residents out there. I'm going to fly in a couple of days. I'm like, hey, man, you're not leaving on Good Friday to go kill yourself in Oregon, so why don't we talk first? Why don't we meet up? And he said, well, okay, all right, we'll meet up. So took him to dinner, got to know him. I delayed it he delayed his flight a couple of days, but he did fly to Oregon on a Sunday, Easter Sunday, actually. And I talked to him every day when he was out in Oregon, and he was at one of these Airbnbs, and I thought I changed his mind. It turned out he only lived like 20 minutes from me, and I said, hey, you got a friend now? And he almost changed his mind. I was like, hey, I'll come out to Portland, we'll see the sights. I don't know what the heck's out in Portland, but maybe there's something cool we could check out, and then we'll fly back together. And he was like, let me think about it. But he was scared, and he was alone, and he was fearful that he would be alone, and he was in desperation. And I talked to him the morning that he did it. And let me tell you, it was a difficult conversation, but he did. And he described the whole process to me. It's an entire market now. And if you don't think that once the structure of these fundamental laws that protect human dignity are destroyed and changed, is going to alter our society, look at what 50 years of abortion did. Okay? The insurance companies, what do you think they're going to cover? Sure, we'll cover the euthanasia. We're not going to cover the 2-year cancer treatment, though. What do you think is going on in Canada? Well, it's cheaper to suggest to this guy, this veteran that has post-traumatic stress disorder, maybe he should try the euthanasia program. Saves the state a little bit of money. Okay, entire markets are built around this. Vermont just did the same thing a few weeks ago. They legalized all residents in the United States to be able to visit Vermont and off themselves with a doctor. Montana legalized it. Pennsylvania is currently considering legalizing this. Kentucky is as well. Virginia, I believe, just passed it out of their state senate maybe a week ago. This is our chance to take a stand against this evil and put it in the state constitution and say, you know what, we're not going along with the crowd with this nihilistic ethos that is suggesting to people that life is not worth living, or it's at least only conditionally worth living. We're going to put it in the state constitution, and to my knowledge, there is no other state that has a prohibition against medically assisted suicide in their state constitution. I think we should be the first and send a strong signal to the rest of the country. We're going to stick by our people. We're going to protect the weak and the vulnerable. We're going to be with them. We're going to hold their hand to the end. And in that sacrifice that we demonstrate towards the vulnerable, we ourselves can gain a lot of meaning out of that. That's another thing we have to bring back, intergenerational families. That's the next thing we should work on. Because the prohibition is going to prevent the medical community from being corrupted. The Hippocratic Oath says, do no harm. This is the opposite of that. But the next thing we really need to work on is trying to make it easier for folks that are struggling to keep their parents in the house, to keep intergenerational family life together. And that's very difficult. It's hard. It's hard right now in today's society. But that's the next thing I think we should work on. But this is first. You know, I just, we need to make it clear to the rest of the country that we need to hold the line on this. We're not going to stand for getting rid of our senior citizens, getting rid of the weak. We need to bring chivalry back. Protect the weak, protect the vulnerable. And I don't think there's too many people in society that are as vulnerable as our senior citizens, and we should be looking up to them, looking up to their wisdom until the day they die. Going through that sacrifice and that pain that they're dealing with together with them. So I'm not going to take much more of your time. I appreciate the time that you allotted me so far. I urge passage, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Debate on the resolution has been closed. The question now before the House is, shall the resolution be adopted? Those in favor of adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 88 ayes, 9 nays, and 3 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the resolution adopted. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 28, Protection from Medically Assisted Suicide or Euthanasia in West Virginia Amendment.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the resolution. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading. For what purpose of the gentleman from 94th I come seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, if possible, I'd like my remarks on this last vote be recorded in the journal.
Chair hears no objection. The appendix, delegate?
Yes.
Yes. Gentleman's remarks will be so recorded. Clerk will please report the next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 441, restricting driving in left lane of multi-lane highways in West Virginia.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman, the 22nd, Dr. Linville, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As amended by the House yesterday, this bill would prevent driving in the left lane, except when obstructions exist, when no one's behind you, or when there is a reason that you could not otherwise, due to traffic, travel in the rightmost lane. Mr. Speaker, that is a summary of the bill. Ohio, this one's for you. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Gentleman with 16th, Delegate Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage of this bill. I've introduced this bill probably 5 years. Part of the legislation that says the Department of Highways will erect signs. I hope those signs say camp out in our state parks. We have beautiful state parks. Don't camp out in the left lane. So I urge passage. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 51st, Delegate Fast.
Thank you. Would the sponsor, gentleman from the 16th, yield?
Yes, sir.
So we are voting on the strike and insert, correct?
Correct.
Not the engrossed that's on the system.
Correct. The strike and insert yesterday. The amendment yesterday put, I forget what bill number in it, but the strike and insert, yes.
Okay, I noticed in the engrossed version it stated that you could drive in the left lane if there was repair, the right lane was in disrepair. And it doesn't say, work going on or anything like that, but just in disrepair. I'm familiar with a lot of sections of road, but one on US 19, it's about a 4-mile stretch. The right lane is just really rough and been patched. The left lane is very, very smooth. But I noticed in the strike and insert, it does not have that language. Am I missing something, or is it not in there?
Well, the copy I have, my glasses on. Let me read it quickly. It says, when all lanes are traveling in the same direction are closed for traffic while under repair, construction or repair, when all lanes are traffic the same direction or disrepair or otherwise undrivable or unsafe condition.
Okay,
So
I
to me,
believe that's the engrossed version, but not the strike and insert.
that's the copy I have, I printed this morning.
It talks about hazards in the right lane, but not disrepair. So, thank you. Inquiry of the chair.
Gentleman will state the question.
So, Mr. Speaker, when we bring this up on the automation system and we click bill text, it brings up, I believe, the engrossed version, and then you have to go to amendments to find the strike and insert. So what are we voting on? The strike and insert that's under amendments or the engrossed version?
The body adopted the amendment yesterday, which became the bill.
So that's not what, though, is coming up on the automation system. It's different. For instance, under C3 on what's under bill text, when all other lanes for traveling in the same direction are closed, C3, when all other lanes for traveling in the same direction are in disrepair or are in otherwise undrivable or unsafe conditions. And then you have to go to what was adopted as the strike and insert. That language is not there.
Do you have available the amendment that was adopted by the body yesterday?
It's under amendments, but it's not when you bring up the bill text on the system, it's different. So I'm just wondering, what are we voting on? What comes up under bill text or what comes up under the amendments that was the strike and insert?
Well, this is a Senate bill, Delegate. We don't engross a Senate bill.
Okay, so we're voting on the strike and insert.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I just note for the body that language is not in there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I would note for the body, we adopted that amendment yesterday, which is now the bill. Is there other debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 5th, Delegate Fluharty.
Hey, Mr. Speaker, gentleman yield. Just clarification, are we creating a primary offense so you could be pulled over just for being in the left-hand lane?
Primary offense. It was previously. Well, no, this is our. One moment. To the gentleman, I believe in a previous version from years past of this bill that it was a primary offense. Counsel is advising me and is checking to be 100% sure that this is not considered a primary offense.
Well, based upon the language, if you're violating this, you're guilty of a misdemeanor.
Counsel, yes, counsel just corrected himself. As As laid out in the bill, yes, it'd be subsection F. Any person violating the provisions of this section is guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction thereof shall be fined not more than $100. And it goes on and on. But anyway, the reality is yes, this
The
could be
answer is
something
yes?
you could
Okay.
be pulled over
Thank you for yielding.
Yes.
Very briefly.
Gentleman's recognized.
Look, I live in the Northern Panhandle. I know Ohioans can't drive. But we're creating a primary offense and allowing the government to pull you over. Day after day, we pass out more big government bills. Day after day after day after day. And the last time I checked, you all run on smaller government. But you don't act like it. I'm not voting for another reason to have somebody pulled over, fined, car searched, whatever comes from it, because we want to run big government bills. I mean, maybe I'm a libertarian these days. I don't know. But this is just, it's annoying. It's getting old. I know the bill's cute, but I'm not voting for more bigger government to pull people over and create a primary offense for being in the left-hand lane, no matter how annoying it is. I curse at him as well, but I'm not voting for this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 94th, Doug Cump's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Permission to speak on the bill?
Yes, gentleman is recognized.
I certainly agree. The aggravation and the annoyance and the unsafe situations that are created that brought this bill to fruition. Nevertheless, it's too much government. I'm not going to vote for it.
Gentleman from the 78th, Douglas Shirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the gentleman from the 5th for being the libertarian champion that he is, talking about big government. I could not agree with him more. Frankly, I think this bill is stupid, and giving the police another reason to pull you over on the highway is absurd. I am against. I encourage everyone in here to vote no. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 52nd, Douglas Rowe, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure who to ask this question of, but the chair of the committee, I'm wondering if Highways was consulted about their excess cost and having the right lanes worn out so quickly when if it's not a statute that folks can go on the left or the right and it would more even out the lanes. Did they present on that, or did we get a fiscal note on that?
I do not believe the bill has a fiscal note, but Highway certainly was consulted and aware of the bill, and this bill has come up in committee every year for the last 4 years. They did not, as I recall, express any concern relative to additional wear and tear to the roads.
Well, it came up when I was in the House in the 1990s, and Highways opposed it openly because they said it's going to wear out the right-hand lane unnecessarily. And of course, as we all know, there's nothing worse than to be driving peacefully down an interstate and have a lane that's under construction. Well, I think that the effect of this bill is going to cause all the wear and tear in the right-hand lane. It's going to be under construction all the time, and we're going to have a nice, clean, pretty left-hand lane, but the right-hand lane is going to be pretty rough. So I would oppose the bill, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 92nd, Doug Height.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this legislation and would just ask all the reds to stay in the right lane.
Question still is on passage of the bill. Is there other debate on the bill? Gentleman, 22nd, Doug Linville, to close debate on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think we're getting a little confused on the total impact of the bill. The bill has passed the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure multiple times and generally in a very overwhelming fashion. So this bill is very simple, and to the gentleman, to the chairman of the Judiciary Committee's question, counsel advises me that when traffic conditions and congestion make it impractical to drive in the right lane and or number 4, when obstructions or hazards exist in the right lane that you would be covered, given that highway road construction would be considered a potential hazard towards the right lane. Mr. Speaker, this is a simple bill. It's something that frustrates all of our constituents. There's many, many laws of the road that we have, and among them is a pretty simple common courtesy. Mr. Speaker, this bill is a simple bill. Here's to you, Ohio. Vote green. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Debate on the bill has been closed. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of this bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 46 ayes, 48 nays, 6 members absent, less than a majority in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill lost. Clerk will please report the next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4110, authorizing certain miscellaneous agencies and boards to promulgate legislative rules.
Question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Chair recognizes the gentleman from 51st to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to attempt a different method explaining a rule bundle. So I will read through all of the agencies that have set forth proposed rules and then ask for adoption. House Bill 4110, Rules Bundle 9, Miscellaneous. This is the Miscellaneous Bundle 9, which contains rules from the following agencies: West Virginia Board of West Virginia Board of Accounting, West Virginia Board of Acupuncture, West Virginia Department of Agriculture, West Virginia Board of Barbers and Cosmetologists, West Virginia Board of Examiners in Counseling, West Virginia Board of Dentistry, West Virginia Board of Licensed Dietitians, that was amended yesterday by the delegate from the 20th, the West Virginia Department of Economic Development, the State Election Commission, Board of Funeral Service Examiners, West Virginia Massage Therapy Licensure Board, West Virginia Medical Imaging and Radiation Therapy Technology Board of Examiners, West Virginia Board of Medicine, West Virginia Nursing Home Administrators Licensing Board, West Virginia Board of Optometry, West Virginia Board of Osteopathic Medicine, the West Virginia Board of Pharmacy, West Virginia Professional Surveyors Board, the Board of Examiners of Psychologists, West Virginia Real Estate Commission, West Virginia Board of Registered Nurses, West Virginia Board of Respiratory Care, Secretary of State, and the Treasurer. That is a summary of the rules, Mr. Speaker, that have been set forth in detail through multiple committees, and I urge adoption. Passage.
You've now heard an explanation of the bill. Is there any discussion? No discussion? No discussion. Before us is adoption of the bill. Those in favor? Passage of the bill. Those in favor, please vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Now has every member voted? If not, the clerk will close the machine and prepare the results. There being 86 yeas, 0 nays, 14 members not voting, I declare the motion, the bill passed. Are there amendments to the title? Will the clerk report the title? Committee substitute for House Bill 4110, authorizing certain miscellaneous agencies and boards to promulgate legislative rules. Are there amendments to the title? No amendments being heard. Yeah, the title will be and remain the title of the bill. Next bill on third reading. Yeah, gentlelady from the
71st.
71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the bill take effect from passage.
Gentlelady moves the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of the gentlelady's motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those no? That's right. That's right. You have to vote. Clerk will prepare the machine. That's right. Has every member voted? If so, has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and prepare the results. There being 93 yeas, 0 nays, 7 members absent not voting, I declare the motion passed.
Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4297, Law Enforcement Officers Safety Act.
Other objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman from the 8th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, everybody. The purpose of the bill is to bring state code into compliance with the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Safety Act, better known as LEOSA. The bill clarifies that correctional officers who complete the required Corrections Academy training are law enforcement officers for the purpose of this section. It authorizes the Commissioner to consult with LEPS to design the training, clarifies arrest powers, and that the section does not expand the law enforcement authority of correctional officers beyond the powers set forth in this section. It clarifies that correctional officers who obtain and maintain a division firearm certification shall receive the LEOSA identification required in Chapter 30, 29, 12 of the Code. That is a summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4297, Law Enforcement Officers Safety Act.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4381, West Virginia Consumer Privacy Act of 2024.
Ladies and gentlemen, this bill was advanced to third reading yesterday with an amendment pending in the general right to amend. Chair notes that we do have 2 amendments pending in the system on this bill. Clerk will please report the first of the 2 amendments.
Delegate Height moves to amend the bill. This is HFA Height 213, number 1.
Are there objections to allowing the sponsor to explain the amendment in lieu of having read? No objections are heard, and the gentleman from the 92nd, Delegate Height, is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is just to clarify some verbiage. In the original bill, it said line of credit. I was informed that mortgages aren't included in line of credit, so the amendment just clarifies and includes all lines of credit, mortgages included. Thank you.
You've heard the amendment explained. The question now is, shall the amendment be adopted? Is there debate on this amendment? Is there debate on this amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment explained by the sponsor, please say aye. As opposed, please say no. Ayes appear to have it. Okay, the ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Clerk will please report the next of the amendments.
Delegate Barnhart moves to amend the bill.
Are there objections to allowing this sponsor to explain this amendment in lieu of having read? No objections are heard. Gentleman from the 9th, Delegate Barnhart, to explain this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my amendment makes some minor changes just to ensure that this bill focuses on credit reporting agencies. So the spirit of the bill before you intends to address the selling of consumer financial information by credit bureaus and also other credit reporting entities. The amendment eliminates the ambiguity here and just makes that intention crystal clear. It also provides clarity, Mr. Speaker, that financial institutions that share information with affiliated third parties to deliver different customer services are in no way adversely impacted by this legislation. which currently financial institutions are already federally protected to do so through the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Also, I would also say I consulted and worked diligently with my friend, the lead sponsor on this amendment, and he had no objections with the language before you in this proposed amendment. So again, this amendment is just going to clarify the intent of the legislation, which is to stop the unauthorized selling of consumer financial information while also ensuring that our financial institutions are not unintentionally impacted by the impact of this bill. So, Mr. Speaker, that's a summary of the amendment, and I would certainly urge passage. Thank you.
You've heard the amendment explained. The question now is on the amendment and only the amendment. We'll get to the bill afterwards. Is there debate on the amendment? Gentleman with 12th Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. This amendment clarifies that this bill seeking to stop credit reporting agencies from selling customer data to third parties. By making this clarification, it makes it clear that banks who are already regulated by federal law are not in the focus of this bill. It further protects our West Virginia bankers from any threat of meritless lawsuits when it reports information to credit reporting agencies through the normal course of business. I urge adoption of the amendment.
Gentleman 92nd, Delegate Height.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After consulting with the gentleman from the 9th, I am in agreement with his amendment and urge its support.
Question still is on the adoption of the amendment explained by the sponsor. Is there other debate on the amendment? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading, read a third time.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4381, West Virginia Consumer Privacy Act of 2024.
Are there objections to having the bill as amended explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman from the 51st to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this committee substitute is to enact the West Virginia Consumer Privacy Act of 2024. The committee substitute creates definitions for purposes of the article. It prohibits a credit reporting agency which receives consumer financial information resulting from certain financial transactions, or a creditor utilizing a credit reporting agency from disclosing or selling the information without the consent of the consumer, except to the extent necessary to process the transaction. It allows consumers to opt in to disclosures in writing, requires the consumer to be given all information to determine what information may be sold or shared. It provides for enforcement by a private action or the Attorney General. It provides a 2-year statute of limitations, and there is the new exception that was just adopted. Financial institutions, creditors, mortgage lenders, or mortgage brokers shall not be subject to any action authorized by this article for sharing consumer information with a credit reporting agency. So that is the summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 93 ayes, 0 nays, and 7 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4381, West Virginia Consumer Privacy Act of 2024.
Are there title amendments?
Delegate Kelly moves to amend the title.
The question is on the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of adoption of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4399, creating the equitable right to expungement.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman from the 51st to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill amends West Virginia Code to allow persons that have successfully completed a pretrial diversion or deferred adjudication to be eligible for filing a petition for an expungement order relating to those charges accepting certain crimes of violence and sexual violence from these allowances in deferred adjudication case resolutions. That's a summary, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
Question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Gentleman from the 57th, Leggett Lewis, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor yield for questions, please?
Sponsor or the chairman?
Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Sorry about
Chairman does yield.
Sir, so with these expungements, so in a situation where your charges are dismissed, if they're, not the violent crimes as you mentioned, or you completed the diversion program, then these charges, and you filed and you were successful in filing and getting the charges expunged, then they wouldn't show up on a prosecutor's report. Is that correct?
That is correct. They are not supposed to through expungement, yes.
And in addition, like on your PSI report, that's a precedent investigation, they wouldn't show up there as well, as long as they successfully expunge.
That is correct. That would all be governed under the expungement statute, but yes, that is correct.
Okay, so the intent of this bill is to say charges in which have been successfully expunged, charges which were dismissed outside of the violent charges that you mentioned, if you did the expungement, you were successful, they would not show up on a prosecutor's or a PSI or other reports.
Under expungement, it is to be as if it never happened.
Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No other questions.
Gentleman from the 64th, Douglas Burkhammer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman yield for a question?
Yes.
So if these records are completely expunged and the offender would reoffend, would he be charged with second offense, whatever the crime would be, or would he be first offense?
Never be an expungement on that. If it is expunged, it would not show up as a first offense. If it's not expunged, then of course you still have the record.
And normally, again, I'm not a good criminal, so normally pretrial diversions and the things are in here, you're essentially saying that you were guilty, that you committed the crime, but you're doing something in exchange of the penalty. But normally you would be guilty.
Well, in a deferred adjudication, you enter a guilty plea, but it's withdrawn. And so there is no guilt. There is no adjudication of guilt when it's all said and done. If you fail to successfully complete the terms of the deferred adjudication, then the guilty plea is already there. The court will accept that, and then you're adjudicated guilty. So, I mean, all of this goes into the expungement statute, which is not what we're dealing with here. We're just simply saying if you successfully complete a deferred adjudication or pretrial diversion, then you're eligible for expungement. That's what this bill does.
Okay, nothing further. So I'm going to rise in opposition of the bill respectfully. I'm all about giving people second chances and wanting them to move beyond their past criminal activity. But I think the idea of totally expunging it, and if they would reoffend in the same manner, that it being again a first offense crime is somewhat of a problem to me. That if you're reoffending, I think that should be second offense. I think there's already expungement for certain circumstances up there, and I think to further this into these elements where essentially someone has said, I am guilty of this, and for it to no longer be part of the record, respectfully, I just disagree with that premise. So I will be voting no. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 66, Douglas Nestor.
Speaker. I want to address this bill. I'm the lead sponsor of this bill, and what this bill actually seeks to do is rectify what I think was the original legislative intent in our two expungement statutes. The bill in front of us today deals with expungement code 611125, and then later, I'm going to guess about 5 years ago, we enacted 611126. And why this bill is aptly titled the equitable right to expungement is that under current law, if you are given a deferred adjudication, in which case, and I'm going to explain that, is when you come before a court of competent jurisdiction and you say, I'm guilty of the offense, but the state and meaning through its prosecuting attorney and the defense counsel agree that the adjudication is going to be withheld, and the judge says that's fine, it's kind of legal fiction. You actually are saying that you're guilty of an offense, the judge finds you guilty of the offense, but he doesn't adjudicate you guilty. And then he sets forth certain parameters. For misdemeanor offenses, that would be for a 2-year period at most, and for felony offenses, a 3-year period at most. And that would mean that you have to comply with, say, community corrections, standard terms and conditions of probations, don't break any state, federal, local laws. And if you do, you will come back to that court and you will be found guilty and sentenced accordingly. Pretrial diversion codified under 61-1122. That is a different animal in that you come before the state, you come before the court, the prosecuting attorney and the defendant through counsel has agreed that they will defer prosecution. In that instance, you don't come before a judge and admit your guilt. You come before a judge, and if the judge chooses to accept the pretrial diversion, what you will do are the same things. You will go on the record and forbear expressly your constitutional right to a speedy trial. And then if you go through all the parameters and obligations the court imposes upon you, then you will not be prosecuted for that offense and the matter will be dismissed. So where I think there might be some confusion from the gentleman from Lewis County is then under either one of those two code provisions, 61-1122, which is our pretrial diversion code, and 61-1122A, which is our deferred adjudication code, you're not going to be eligible to have any of those offenses, sexually motivated offenses, violent offenses, offenses committed with the use, presentment of a firearm, basically offenses that you would want to know, the state would want to know, society would want to know that there was a previous conviction for, okay? So the reason for this bill, the primary impetus of it, is that it doesn't stand to reason under 61-1126 there are qualifying offenses for which you come before a circuit court and you say, hey, it's been 5 years since I've been released from probation or parole or from an institution, whichever is later in time, for this qualifying offense, which again is non-sexually motivated. It is a non-violent offense. And you say to that judge, look, I've been rehabilitated. This is the only offense for which I've ever had on my record. What is important to note here is that somebody stands in a better position if this bill doesn't pass than if they've come before a jury of their peers or they've come before a court of competent jurisdiction and said, I'm guilty of this offense. You're in a better position to get that particular conviction expunged from your record, an actual conviction, than if the matter was dismissed because the prosecutor didn't feel they had enough evidence, it was an improper charge in the first instance. Your arrest and charge is still going to be on your record. So what this bill does is it seeks to resolve an ambiguity that I don't think was ever the intent of the legislature when it implemented 61-1126, so that people stand in the same position as people that are convicted to have matters that were dismissed as a matter of law expunged. That's all it does. And you're not going to get a pretrial diversion or a deferred adjudication on any type of crime for which is so significant that the state and the court systems and society would be needed to be aware of a previous conviction. So I hope that addresses your primary concern. I urge adoption of this bill because we do have an issue. 61-1126 would have never been adopted by this legislature if it wasn't for people having rehabilitated themselves, not being able to enter into the workforce, not being able to capitalize on the opportunities we work every day in this chamber to provide them for. And so it doesn't stand to reason that 61-1125 is going to disallow you to have certain matters that were dismissed and then people that were convicted to not have those same matters, that allow them to have those same matters dismissed upon conviction. So it's a very, very important bill if we're to have a reasonable expungement laws on the books here. It's going to make it easier for society, legal practitioners, and courts to understand. It's going to be beneficial to our community, especially the workforce as a whole. So again, I strongly urge adoption. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from 57th take Lewis seek recognition?
I just want to speak to the bill briefly.
Yes, the gentleman's recognized.
Just as a practical matter, I was a judge and I was on the parole board. And what often would happen is that prosecutors and on the PSI reports, we would get a long list of charges. And there would be no differentiation between what was actually a conviction, a plea, or what was dismissed. And I think what this, again, I think the gentleman's done a great job explaining what the bill does, but this as a practical matter, what this bill does, if you have entered a diversion program or if your charges was dismissed, this allows you just to get that off your record because it shouldn't have been on your record. It shouldn't be reflected as though it was a charge. So that's all. Thank you.
Is there other debate on this bill? Is there other debate on the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. We have 89 ayes, 7 nays, 4 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares this bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4399, creating the equitable right to expungement.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. For what purpose does the gentleman in 57 seek recognition?
I would like to ask unanimous consent to be added to the bill, sir.
To be added to?
Bring a co-sponsor.
As a sponsor on the bill?
Yeah.
Is there space available on the bill? There is space.
I believe so.
Are there objections to the gentleman's name being added to the bill? No objection to her. Gentleman will be so added to the bill.
Thank you.
Clerk will now please communicate the action of the House to the Senate on committee substitute for House Bill 4399. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for, not committee substitute. House Bill 4717, relating to terminating the authority of the Director of the Purchasing Division to impose a certain annual fee upon vendors.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman on the 12th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, ask for Rule 49.
Yes, the gentleman has sought a ruling from the chair pursuant to House Rule 49 as a vendor to the state. If there are other members in the body who seek a similar ruling from the chair pursuant to House Rule 49, please press your recognition buttons at this time. Please turn off your recognition buttons at this time. Many people seek such a ruling. Clerk will please prepare the machine for House Rule 49 vote. All members who seek a ruling from the chair pursuant to House Rule 49 will please register your vote. It is the ruling of the chair that there is a class greater than 5 for all such members. Therefore, all members are eligible to vote on this question. No members are excused. Gentleman now may proceed to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill will terminate the authority of the Director of the Purchasing Division to impose a certain annual fee upon vendors. I urge passage.
Question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 94 ayes, 0 nays, and 6 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4717, relating to terminating the authority of the Director of the Purchasing Division to impose a certain annual fee upon vendors.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the bill take effect from its passage.
The lady from the 71st moves that House Bill 4717 be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 94 ayes, 0 nays, and 6 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4754, exempting the processing of beef, pork, or lamb by a slaughterhouse for an individual owner of the product processed from the consumer sales and service tax.
Objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman from the 12th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill will exempt the processing of beef, pork, or lamb by a slaughterhouse from the consumer sales and service tax. I urge passage.
Question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Gentleman from the 91st, Douglas Forrest, your vote's not registered. Has every member now voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 94 ayes, 0 nays, and 6 members absent. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4754, exempting the processing of beef, pork, or lamb by a slaughterhouse for an individual owner of the product processed from the consumer sales and service tax.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4943 to facilitate the creation of home-based businesses.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, Gentleman from the 93rd, Douglas Hornby, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee substitute for House Bill 4943 defines no-impact home business and preserves the right of owners to conduct home-based business on their residential property. I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 87 ayes, 7 nays, and 6 members absent. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4943 to facilitate the creation of home-based businesses.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the bill take effect from its passage.
Lady from the 71st moves that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 93 ayes, 1 nay, and 6 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4984, relating to repealing tax credit for employing former employees of Colin Anderson Center.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman from the 12th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would merely clean up the West Virginia Code by repealing an obsolete tax credit that expired and has not been available for 24 years. I urge passage.
Question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? Is there debate on this bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 94 ayes, 0 nays, and 6 members absent. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4984, relating to repealing tax credit for employing former employees of Colin Anderson Center.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5318, clarifying that elected municipal police chiefs shall be certified law enforcement officers.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 8th, Dr. Kelly to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to clarify that elected municipal police chiefs shall be certified law enforcement officers. The committee substitute amended the section of code which requires municipal police chiefs to be certified law enforcement officers by clarifying that the section also applies to elected chiefs. It exempts persons elected as chief prior to July 1 of 2024 until such person has a break in service as an elected chief. And also it exempts chiefs from Class 4 towns from requirements of this section. That is a summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? The clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 94 ayes, 0 nays, and 6 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5318, clarifying that elected municipal police chiefs shall be certified law enforcement officers.
Are there title amendments?
Delegate Kelly moves to amend the title.
The question now is on the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of adoption of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 5443, clarifying that electronic data processing services are to be included in the evaluation of specialized high-technology property.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman the 21st, Doug Cannon to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to clarify that the high technology property valuation statute in our current code includes the hosting and processing of electronic data as part of a data center operation and high performance data computing to process in connection with digital, blockchain, and/or artificial intelligence technology. There is a fiscal note in the system showing a $0 impact on the state that reads, quote, "Passage of this bill will not result in the reduction of any existing property tax revenue." Put simply, the bill simply brings definitions of technology from 2004 into the 2024 standards, and I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 94 ayes, 1 nay, and 5 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 5443, clarifying that electronic data processing services are to be included in the valuation of specialized high-technology property.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are the bills on third reading today? If not, bills on second reading.
Senate Bill 605, requiring electronic funds transfer of retirement contributions by participating employers.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Senate Bill 606, relating to natural resources police officers' retirement system.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Senate Bill 607, clarifying municipal police officers and firefighters' retirement system surviving spouse benefits.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4654, removing bona fide schools, public libraries, and museums from the list of exemptions from criminal liability relating to distribution and display to minor of obscene matter.
Lady 71st.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be advanced to third reading with the right to amend.
Lady asks unanimous consent to advance the bill to third reading with the general right to amend. Does the chair hear objection? No objections are heard, and the bill will be so advanced. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4807, establishing limitations on billing practices of internet or telecommunications providers that fail to provide subscribed customers service for 5 or more days.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Hillenbrand moves to amend the bill. On page 2, section 111, line 27, immediately following the word shall, by inserting the following: seek a resolution of the violation and may.
You've heard the amendment explained, or you've heard the amendment read. The question now is, shall the amendment be adopted? Chair recognize the sponsor, gentleman the 88th, Douglas Hillenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a simple change here. It gives the Attorney General's office the option to twist the arm, so to speak, of those that are not cooperating prior to causing an action. This was done at the request of the Attorney General's office, and the committee has worked it out with them. I urge adoption.
Gentleman the 22nd, Douglas Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee has reviewed the gentleman's amendment. It does no harm to the bill. In fact, likely strengthens it, and was done in coordination with the Attorney General's office, and therefore I do urge adoption.
Is there other debate on the amendment? Is there other debate on the amendment read by the clerk? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment read by the clerk will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4809, Healthcare Sharing Ministries Freedom to Share Act.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4850, removing the sunset clause from oil and gas personal property tax.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4867, require pornography websites to utilize age verification methods to prevent minors from accessing content.
Lady Ms. 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be advanced to third reading with amendments pending and the right to amend.
Are there objections? No objections are heard. That bill will be so advanced. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 5128, directing transfer of monies into fire protection funds at the end of each year.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5137.
Lady Ms. 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to postpone action one day.
Are there objections to postponing action one day on the bill? No objections are heard. Action will be postponed one day on the bill. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 5170, increasing the size of matching grants for local economic development from $30,000 to $50,000.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5294, revising state law regulating farm wineries.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5319, creating the offense of exposing a law enforcement officer, probation officer, parole officer, courthouse security officer, correctional officer, the state fire marshal, a deputy or assistant fire marshal, firefighter, or emergency medical service personnel to fentanyl.
Are there amendments?
Delegates Howe and Kelly move to amend the bill by striking
Are there objections to
everything.
allowing the sponsor to explain the amendment in lieu of having read? If not, gentleman from the 87th, Douglas Howell, to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our amendment's relatively simple. It just opens up to any person who is exposed if any person is exposed. Thank
you. You've heard the amendment explained. The question now is, shall the amendment be adopted? Is there debate on this amendment? Gentleman from the 54th, Douglas Pushkin, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the author of the amendment, I apologize in this corner. I could not hear a word you said. Could you please explain the amendment?
Absolutely. It opens it up to if any person is exposed, not just the list. So if, give you an example, say officer's making an arrest, a drug arrest, say at a 7-Eleven, gets exposed to fentanyl, collapses, the clerk would come out to help the officer, gets exposed to the same fentanyl, collapses, both would be treated the same.
Okay, and it just relates to it resulting in death?
Death or exposure, medical issues. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Question still is on the amendment explained by the sponsor, the gentleman from the 87th, Douglas Howell. Is there debate on this amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of this amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it, Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 5337, establishing the Legislative Oversight Committee of the Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5345.
Item 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to postpone action one day.
Are there objections to postponing action one day on the bill? No objections are heard. The bill will be postponed by 1 day. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5354.
Item 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to postpone action one day.
Are there objections to postponing action 1 day on the bill? No objections are heard, and action will be postponed 1 day on the bill. Are the bills on second reading today? If not, bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4640, relating to the transfer of certain revenues derived from lottery activities.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4911, relating to the sale of raw milk.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4978, relating to clarifying the authority of appointed officials.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5013, relating to timber management.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5022.
Item 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to postpone action 1 day.
Are there objections to postponing 1 day on the bill? No objections are heard. Action on the bill will be postponed by 1 day. Are the next bill on first reading.
House Bill 5528, relating to the Renewable Energy Facilities Program.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5549, allowing license plates, road signs, or markers to be obtained from alternative sources when the Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation is unable to produce them.
Bill will be advanced. Other bills on first reading today. If not, leaves of absence. Item 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for our delegates Foggin, Ellington, and Martin.
Are there objections to leaves of absence being granted? No objections are heard, and those leaves of absence will be granted. Introductions. Introductions. Gentleman from the 93rd, Delegate Hornby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I noticed up in the West Gallery, Berkeley County Commission President Jim Whitaker. Please give him a round.
Gentleman from the 65th, Delegate Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of inquiry, was my name mentioned on the absence?
Yes, it was.
I
I see you.
I've been here for all the votes.
Yeah, no, he was here.
Gentleman is obviously present and will be so noted in the journal. Other introductions? Miscellaneous business. Lady from the 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Are there announcements? Lady from the 71st.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Your Rules Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 10:45 in the Members' Lounge.
Gentleman from the 12th, Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Committee on Finance is asking the PEIA for a written presentation for its financial information that in the past was available through the budget hearing process. The committee was disappointed that the director did not provide this information yesterday during the committee meeting. Also today, our per diem, Stella Dunn's birthday, so we wish to welcome her to a happy birthday.
Gentleman from the 97th, Delegate Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet tomorrow, February 16th at 9 a.m. in the Finance Committee room for budget hearings for the Department of Human Services. Please have all your questions ready. Also, Mr. Speaker, there will be a committee meeting immediately following the budget presentations to take up legislation. The agenda will be posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 8th, Delegate Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet tomorrow morning, Friday the 16th, at 9:15 a.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, Republican members will caucus 15 minutes early. That's at 9 o'clock in the chairman's office, and the agenda will be posted.
Lady from the 49th, Doug Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet today at 3:15 in the East Wing Committee Room. This is a slight delay from the original announced time. Republican members will caucus in the chair's office at 2:45, which is also a change of the time. The agenda is posted, and please bring your laptops. Thanks.
Gentleman from the 43rd, Doug Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet tomorrow, Friday, February the 16th at 9:30 in the Education Committee Room. The agenda is posted. Additionally, Republican members will caucus in the Chairman's office at 4:15.
Gentleman from the 88th, Doug Hillenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a reminder, the Veterans Caucus will be meeting today at 5 o'clock at the Cultural Center, where we will meet with Randall Reed Smith. All veterans report for duty.
Gentleman from the 21st, Doug Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure will meet at 4 p.m. today. Please note the time change, 4 p.m. Republican members will caucus at 3:30 p.m. in the Chairman's office. The agenda has been posted.
Gentleman from the 99th, Doug Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Economic Development and Tourism will meet today at 3 p.m. in the House Judiciary Room. Republican members will caucus at 2:30. Also, Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is West Virginia Adventure Travel Day, and this evening at 6 p.m. through 10 p.m. there is a social over at the Recovery Sports at the Sheraton Hotel.
Gentleman from the 2nd, Doug Teslo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing will meet today at 2:30 in the House Finance Conference Room. The agenda has been posted. Thank you.
Are there other announcements? Lady from the 71st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Judiciary Subcommittee on House Bill 4591 will meet in the Vice Chair's office at 2:30 today.
Gentleman from the 86th, Doug Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a reminder, there's folks from the, drawing a blank, in the McManus Room. Heartland Institute. They'll be on hand to answer questions from 1 to 3. Thank you.
Are there other announcements? If not, the questions on the motion that the House stand adjourned at 11 a.m. tomorrow, when you'll get to hear the clerk try to say phenylpropanolamine. Those in favor of the motion will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. We are adjourned to 11 a.m. tomorrow.